I was finalizing the last names on my guest list when Mum's message appeared. Your sister's wedding is the family's priority. We can't make it to yours. No emojis, no hesitation, just cold certainty. It hit harder than I expected, like hearing a door quietly lock from the other side. I didn't reply, didn't fight. I simply stared at the blinking cursor, typed, "That's fine," and shut the laptop. A week later, while they slipped into gowns and tuxes for Chloe's big day, the world learned what they'd never cared to ask. My own ceremony was already unfolding beneath the olive trees of my $6 million villa in Tuscany. When the photos spread online, the silence from home said more than words ever could. Before I tell you how it all came to that, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from, because sometimes the people who promise to show up for us simply don't. When people ask what growing up in our house was like, I never know where to begin. From the outside, we looked perfect. Christmas cards in matching sweaters. Smiles polished enough to fool anyone into believing we were close. But if you looked a little longer, you'd see the pattern. Every story, every spotlight, somehow circled back to my younger sister, Chloe. She was the center of gravity. I was the quiet orbit keeping everything in balance. I once thought it was normal. Mum's eyes glowing whenever Chloe walked into a room. Dad bragging about her dance trophies at every dinner. When I brought home science fair ribbons or straight A's, they'd nod, change the subject. Mum would sigh and say, "You're lucky, Esther. Things just come easier for your sister." Lucky. The word always cut deep. It made every hour of effort feel invisible. There's an album in my parents' living room that tells the truth better than I ever could. Page after page of Chloe in pink tutus. Chloe blowing out candles. Chloe at prom. I appear once, maybe twice. Cropped at the edge, turned away. When I was 16, I found a photo where I'd stood right beside her. But in the printed version, my face was gone, literally trimmed out. Mom said it made the composition cleaner. I didn't cry. I just stopped expecting to be in the frame. Grandma Helen was the only one who noticed. During family dinners, she'd lean close and whisper, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Some people only see what shines." She had a way of making you feel visible, even when everyone else forgot you were there. Needing to defend yourself. My cousin Rachel too. She was always the one to remember birthdays, after my parents forgot. But favoritism doesn't explode in a single moment. It seeps in, slow and quiet, until silence feels safer than confrontation. By the time we were adults, it had evolved into its own unspoken language. When Chloe missed my college graduation, Mom called it a misunderstanding. When she borrowed money and never paid it back, Dad excused it as she's still finding her way. So when the wedding text came through, I wasn't shocked. It didn't hurt because it was new. It hurt because it confirmed everything I'd already known. I'd spent my entire life being the adjustable one, the one who bent so others could remain comfortable. But that night, as I stared at Mom's message, something shifted. For once I didn't bend. I looked around my apartment, the soft hum of the fridge, the faint scent of cedar candles I'd lit to calm myself. My wedding invitations sat stacked on the counter, sealed in gold wax, each one handwritten. I used to picture them proudly displayed on my parents' fridge. Now I imagined them unopened, buried under bills and flyers, while Chloe's glossy event took center stage. Yet, beneath the sting, a strange calm began to form, a quiet realization that maybe this was my chance to stop begging for a seat at their table. 2 days after that message, Chloe called as if nothing had happened. Her voice was bright, sugary, the tone she used when she wanted something. "Can you believe it?" she chirped. "The venue we wanted opened up last minute. It's the same weekend as yours, but that's fine, right? You're on the West Coast. We're in Boston. It's destiny, destiny." She actually said that word, like a line from a Hallmark movie. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. I just listened to the clinking of her bracelets through the phone, realizing she was waiting for me to congratulate her. "That's great, Chloe," I said evenly. "Really, perfect timing," she giggled. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable." Reasonable. That was my assigned role in our family script. Steady, mature, predictable. The one they could rely on while they catered to her chaos. The next evening, Mom called. Her voice carried that careful tone she always used when she was about to disappoint me, but didn't want to feel guilty for doing it. "Guilty about it? Sweetheart," she began gently. "About the wedding dates. Chloe's fiancé's family can only do that weekend. She's very emotional right now, and it would mean so much if you could be flexible. Flexible. Another word that once defined me." I asked quietly, "So, you want me to move my wedding?" Mom hesitated. "We just think it would be easier for everyone. You're so independent, Esther. You'll understand." The irony nearly made me laugh. Easier. For them. For her. Not once did she ask what it would cost me. "Mom," I said slowly, "you promised you'd be there." She sighed. Long, weary, like I was the unreasonable one. "It's not about choosing sides, honey. It's just logistics." That word, logistics, hit harder than I expected. It was my whole career, the foundation of the company I'd built. To me, it meant precision, fairness, integrity. But in my family's version of the dictionary, it was just another synonym for betrayal. That night, I called my father. He answered with his usual calm, practical tone. "Izzy, you know how your sister gets. If we don't go, she'll take it personally. You've always been the strong one." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. "So you're saying it's my job to understand?" Again. He didn't answer. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. For a long while, I sat in the dark. The only sounds the low hum of the fridge and the clock ticking past midnight. The light from my engagement ring caught the counter's edge, scattering tiny reflections across the wall, like fragments of something I'd been holding together too long. And that's when it clicked. My family wasn't cruel in loud, dramatic ways. Their weapon was omission, leaving me out of photos, out of conversations, out of priority lists. I'd been trained to mistake silence for love. Not this time. I closed the laptop, opened my travel bookmarks, and clicked on a listing I'd saved months ago. A stone villa in Tuscany, surrounded by olive groves. The photos glowed like a dream, gold lights spilling across terracotta walls. If they wouldn't show up for me, I'd build something they could never ignore. The next morning, I booked a flight to Italy. No announcements, no family group chat, no tearful goodbyes, just one quiet decision made in absolute stillness. When the plane dipped beneath the clouds over Tuscany, the light looked different, softer, almost forgiving. I rented a small car and drove through winding roads lined with cypress trees until I reached the villa I'd only ever seen in photos. It was older than I imagined. Stone walls the color of honey, wooden shutters cracked with age, olive trees stretching endlessly into the hills. The caretaker, an elderly man named Signor Rossi, handed me a ring of keys and said in careful English, "This place waits for someone who truly sees it." For the first time in months, I felt seen. Inside, the air smelled of earth and time, like a place that remembered every voice that had once passed through its rooms. As I wandered from chamber to chamber, I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a blank canvas, a chance to rebuild my story without anyone cropping me out. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into restoring it. I hired local craftsmen who treated every beam and stone as if it were sacred. The rhythm of hammers and laughter mingled with the hum of cicadas. Each evening, I'd sit on the terrace with a notebook, sketching the courtyard for the wedding. One long stone table beneath a canopy of vines, strings of lanterns swaying gently in the breeze. No family table, no hierarchy, Just one space for anyone who chose to show up. The locals began calling me La Señora Silencio, the quiet lady. I liked it. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strength. When I called my fiancé to tell him my plan, he didn't hesitate. "If this is what peace looks like for you," he said softly, "I'm in." For the first time in my life, I believed someone meant it. A week later, I began sending out new invitations. Not the embossed, gold-edged kind I'd sent before, but simple cream envelopes with pressed olive leaves tucked inside. Handwritten, honest, personal. The first went to Rachel, my cousin, the one who always remembered my birthday. The next to Grandma Helen, who had always seen through the family's illusions. One by one, the replies began to arrive. Rachel called first. "We heard what happened," she said. "Aunt Judy told everyone Chloe's wedding is the event of the year. We're done pretending. Send us the details. We'll be there." Her voice broke halfway through, not from pity, but from loyalty. By the end of the week, flights were booked. Grandma texted, "I've missed enough real love in my life. I'll be in Tuscany, my dear." The group chat they created called itself The Real Family Table. My phone lit up with photos of passports, suitcases, and laughing emojis. For the first time, I didn't feel left behind. I felt chosen. And somewhere between the olive trees and the scent of fresh plaster, I realized this wasn't revenge. It was revelation. The morning of both weddings rose under the same sun, two worlds spinning miles apart. In Boston, the air was thick with humidity and nerves. The hotel ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers. But there was an unease that even the florist couldn't hide. Half the front row chairs sat empty. Mom lingered near the entrance in her lavender dress, smiling too wide, pretending not to see how many familiar faces were missing. Dad checked his watch, then his phone, then the door again. "Maybe the flights got delayed," Mom whispered, her voice brittle. But no one was coming. Inside, Chloe adjusted her veil for the 5th time. Her bridesmaids hovered, whispering, "Where's Grandma?" Didn't she always sit in the first row? Chloe's smile faltered. "She must be running late," she said, but her voice cracked on the words. The photographer shifted awkwardly, rearranging the guests to make the room look fuller. "Maybe move everyone forward," he suggested gently. "Sure," Chloe replied with a shaky laugh, clutching her bouquet as her hand trembled. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the same sunlight poured over Tuscany's rolling hills, glinting off silver olive leaves. The villa shimmered like a painting, stone walls wrapped in green vines, lanterns swaying softly in the wind. The long table was set beneath the grape canopy, glowing with candles, wildflowers, and hand-thrown clay plates crafted by local artisans. Rachel's children chased each other through the trees, their laughter carrying through the courtyard. Eli tuned his guitar, strumming the first notes of a love song. Grandma Helen sat in the front row, holding a small olive branch she'd plucked that morning. "A symbol of peace," she said. I stood inside, watching the light spill through the open doorway. My gown wasn't grand or glittering, just silk, simple and soft, catching the gold of the afternoon sun. Lucia, the local chef who had become my friend, pinned a sprig of olive leaves into my hair and whispered, "For good fortune and for truth." When I stepped outside, the breeze lifted the veil from my shoulders. Every face turned toward me, warm and expectant. Glowing in the golden light, Grandma rose first, her eyes bright with pride. "There she is," she whispered, and for the first time I believed her. There was no orchestra, no rehearsed choreography, just Eli's soft guitar, the rustle of vines, and the quiet sounds of people who had chosen to be there. As I walked down the aisle, I thought about every empty chair that had once represented absence, birthdays, forgotten graduations, and silences mistaken for peace. But here, every seat was filled. Every gaze met mine without flinching. The officiant, a friend of Lucia's, bespoke in melodic English. Love is not measured by how many are invited, but by who shows up. The words sank deep, settling in my chest like truth. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't look at paper. My vows came out like breath. To the ones who show up, I began, voice steady. This love is for you, for those who believed in me before I ever proved I was enough. For the ones who stayed when it wasn't convenient. Rachel wiped her eyes. Grandma nodded, whispering, "That's my girl." When the ceremony ended, the applause rose. Not loud, but warm, human, alive. The courtyard filled with laughter, the scent of truffle butter and rosemary drifting from Lucia's kitchen. Doors swung open, carrying platters of handmade pasta and roasted vegetables. Lanterns flickered to life as the sky turned violet over the hills. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Halfway through dinner, Rachel leaned over, showing me her phone. "They're talking about it already," she said, half laughing. Photos were spreading through the family group chats, the villa glowing beneath the vines, candles glimmering, Grandma laughing with Eli's arm around her shoulder, Rachel's kids tossing petals into the air. Within hours, the images reached Boston. In the ballroom, Chloe was posing for her portrait when one of the bridesmaids gasped, scrolling through her phone. "Wait, aren't those your parents? They're in Italy." "What?" Chloe frowned, snatching the phone. On the screen was a photo of me and my husband standing beneath the Tuscan lanterns, the family smiling around us. Grandma holding her olive branch high, Rachel's children showering petals across the table. Chloe froze. The photographer hesitated, lowering his camera. Around her, the murmur began, soft at first, then spreading. "Isn't that Aunt Marianne and Uncle Ray? I thought they were supposed to be here." Mum leaned over Dad's shoulder, eyes narrowing at the phone. "What is this?" she whispered. Dad's face went pale. "It's Esther's wedding," Chloe's breath caught. They went to hers. Mum didn't answer. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument could have been. Guests shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The band kept playing, trying to fill the air, but even the music sounded hollow. When the officiant lifted his glass to toast family unity, no one raised theirs. Back in Tuscany, laughter rippled through the courtyard. Lucia refilled glasses of red wine, smiling as she said, "Eat, drink, and remember why you came." Grandma leaned across the table and took my hand. "I've waited a long time to see this, Esther," she said softly. "This is what family was always meant to look like." The night deepened into gold and violet. Someone began a slow song, and guests danced barefoot across the stone floor. For a moment, I slipped away toward the olive grove. The air smelled of wood smoke and lavender. Behind me, the villa glowed with life. My phone buzzed on the table. Messages, missed calls, voicemails stacking one after another. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. In Boston, Mum's voice trembled through the receiver as she left another message. "Esther, how could you do this to us? Everyone's talking about it. We look like fools." I listened the next morning, sipping coffee beneath the same olive tree where I'd said my vows. The sun was rising, painting the hills amber. I replayed the message once more, then deleted it. They thought humiliation was the punishment. It wasn't. The real consequence was understanding that I had finally moved on, without their permission, without their presence, without needing to be seen to exist. The photos continued to circle online, shared by cousins, reposted by friends. One image, Grandma raising her olive branch under the lanterns, became the quiet emblem of what we'd created. No captions, no explanations, just truth. For years they had cropped me out of their pictures. This time I didn't need a place in theirs. I had built my own frame and filled it with light. A week after both weddings, Tuscany grew still again. The lanterns came down, the laughter faded into memory, but the air still carried the warmth of what we had built. Proof that love, once chosen freely, never really leaves. The long table stood empty now, scattered with dried petals and faint wine stains, proof that something real had happened there. One morning, as I packed away the last of the decorations, my phone rang. Mom. For a moment, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside me whispered, answer. Not for them, for yourself. Her voice was shaky, defensive. Esther, do you have any idea how embarrassed we were? Everyone at Chloe's wedding was talking about your little event in Italy. You made us look heartless. I took a slow breath, watching sunlight creep across the stone floor. I didn't make you look any way, Mom, I said evenly. I just gave people a chance to see the truth. Silence hung on the line. Then a trembling sigh. You've always been so cold. We were just trying to keep peace. Before I could respond, another voice cut in. Grandma's. Judy, that's enough, she said, firm but calm. You spent years asking this girl to shrink herself for your comfort. Now she finally stands tall, and you call it cruelty. No, my dear, that's freedom. Mom said nothing after that. The call ended quietly, like a door closing without a slam. I stepped outside. The olive trees swayed gently in the breeze. Lucia came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Everything okay? I smiled faintly. Better than okay. It's finally quiet. In all the right ways. She glanced toward the long table and said softly, Then eat, Signora. You've earned peace. That evening, I set one last plate at the head of the table, the seat that had always been empty. I tied a small olive green ribbon around the chair and whispered, For the girl who once waited to be chosen. The wind moved through the vines like a gentle sigh, and for the first time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. Later, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, I poured a glass of wine and thought of Grandma's words. Love isn't management. It's showing up. She was right. You don't have to fight for a seat at someone else's table. Build your own, and the right people will find their way to it. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the quietest revenge is peace.